Hey, what's good, everyone? What's good? Thank you for tuning in. Again, this is Tony Reeves, and welcome to another edition of the Reeves Reflection. Today, I want to talk to you about what it means or what it meant for me to transition from a brick and mortar to a virtual law firm. Now, let me set the backstory up for this. For those of you who don't know, there are various professions as a whole that tend to stick to the way they do things. And legally, in the legal community, this one is we're probably the most risk averse in terms of changing everything. So when I started practicing law back in 2001, I went to go work for a law firm, and they did everything brick and mortar. And what do you mean by brick and mortar? Basically, everything was paper. I mean, we had file cabinets of thick files that were huge, and literally we had paper systems, and we tried to check to see where they were and everything like that. We had to give documentation, check out where they were, things of that nature. But about halfway through the time I was there, probably around 2003, 2004, something around that time period, the founding partner of the firm decided he wanted to switch to paperless. Now, this was a novel concept, meaning we did some things electronically in terms of within our workspace, but almost everything invariably was done by paper. And this was just a new concept. And so what he did was he created a situation where we had a server in one location, and then every location, and we had a server in Louisiana because that's where one of our offices were, and we had offices in Ohio, Florida, and Louisiana. And so for the first time, we started going through the process of having the ability to access all of your files that were being held at one location. Now, the fascinating part is that every other location had to scan those documents in. And we were doing this almost simultaneously as the agency we were dealing with was switching to electronic as well. And so by the time I left the law firm in 2007, we were almost entirely paperless. So this way, we didn't have to worry about hard files or anything like that. We did almost everything electronically with a laptop and so forth. Which brings me to what happens for me in 2007. In 2007, I go out on my own, and you would think after spending about a good couple of years working in an environment where they have gone paperless, that's what I would do. That would be a hard no. I, on the other hand, fell into the trap of going, I can't wait. Everything in terms of what I had seen from older firms and from my experience when I first started working is what I wanted to do. So I had two office locations, one where I was sharing office space with a couple of colleagues, and another one that was on my own closer to where I lived. And so I had two file cabinets, I had paper files, and it was awesome. And I just thought this was going to work for me. And so it was funny because after a period of time, I realized that if I have two offices, having files at one location for clients in one office and having files at another location in another office was kind of cumbersome, but it worked for me until finally I decided to see if I could maybe do something electronically. So I started doing something electronically, and slowly but surely I started scanning things into a remote server that I had in Colorado. But here was the funny part. I was still bouncing from office to office. I was, processing files in one office in one location, and then I was processing files in another office in another location. But at one particular point, my wife, the smartest person in the room, who became on as my office manager, noticed me going back and forth. And so finally, she kind of helped me find my second office. She helped me decorate it and get all the stuff together. But at one point, one evening, we were talking. And so she asked me a question. She said, let me ask you this. How many of your clients do you meet in your office? And I said, which one? Either one. And I had to stop and think about the fact that in reality, I didn't. I wasn't meeting anybody in either one of those offices. And so then she was like, so let me get this straight. Where do you normally meet your clients? I said, I either meet my clients at their home. I either meet my clients at the library. I either meet my clients at the courts that I represent them in and so forth. So it's usually one of those three places. So she says, so when you meet them, do you bring a hard file with you all the time? I said, no. I typically just bring my laptop so that this way I can access the stuff that I have. at the different locations. And so she stopped and she said to me, very, in her way of kind of letting me know, hey, dummy, think about this for a second. So she said, so let me get this straight. You've got 2 office locations. You don't meet clients at either one of those locations. And you deal with your clients with the information that you have at a remote location through your laptop. Yeah. So you're a virtual law firm. I said, well, I got. She said, whoa. So why are you having the 2 office locations? Because, as an attorney, it's important that I have a physical location so my clients can have access to me. She said, but hold on, let me pause again. You've just told me that you have a third-party site of where your documents are now. You're kind of moving from the paper. You're scanning some of those paper. You're keeping a hard paper file. Yeah. You're scanning those documents to a remote third location. I said, yeah. And at the same time, you're also telling me that you never meet your clients at any one of your locations. Correct. So again, why are we keeping these locations again? And it was funny because as she said it, I stopped and I was like, I didn't know how to answer those questions because in my mind it made sense. And the reason why it made sense is because in my mind I had thought attorneys have physical locations. I'm an attorney. If I want to demonstrate that I'm successful, I need to have 2 physical locations. And her thing to me was, but you're successful already and nobody comes to see you at those locations. So are those locations more for you or for them? And for a split second, I realized they're not for me. I mean, they're not for them. They're for me. And then she said, I got news for you. Are you a virtual practice or are you a brick and mortar practice? Well, I said, well, brick and mortar. She said, no. I think you're misunderstanding. If you are researching cases in your brick and mortar, if you're meeting clients in those brick and mortars, if you're preparing clients in those brick and mortars, if you're handling cases in those brick and mortars, then you're a brick and mortar. Yeah. But that's not what you're doing. You're telling me that you have a third-party server in Colorado. You're telling me the documents, when they come in, you scan them in, you send them out there. Yep. And out of nowhere, you also are telling me that you never meet your clients in any of these places. How did your clients find you? Almost all of them find you online, right? Either they're referred to you, and when people refer to you, they refer you through your website. You deal with everything online, right? She said, so what you're telling me is you're a virtual practice. And so what ended up happening was shortly after her bringing that realization, she just basically said, if you're a virtual practice and you're telling me that you are operating as a virtual practice, because that's literally what you're doing, then why do you need these other sites? And literally, as soon as she said that, I closed down both of them. One of them, I just didn't renew the lease when it expired because it was funny because I got the lease in March. My wife came on in October. And so when March came around, I just didn't renew the lease. And then the other space, I just took all of my stuff out of the space I was having there. And I just told the people there that if anybody calls me, just have them call my toll-free number and we're good. And so routinely I would call and say, hey, did you ever have any walk-ins for me? And they would say no. Well, then, bam, they didn't need to be there either. And so as a result, what ended up happening? Some people would probably say, so what you're telling me is you kind of fell into a virtual practice. I was like, no, falling into it implies that I did something by accident. The reality is that I was running a virtual practice and just didn't appreciate that I was running it because I had convinced myself that I needed to have all of these other aspects in order to give the appearance of being a successful attorney. My wife's attitude was, you're doing things virtually and you are still being successful for your clients. Your clients don't care about whether it's brick and mortar or virtual. They care about you being successful. And what you're telling me is you're moving from the things that you've described to me. What you're telling me is you're moving virtually. Therefore, you're a virtual law firm. And literally shortly thereafter, I actually ended up ditching that third-party provider for the third-party site, and I switched to a cloud-based format. It's called Clio, and I switched to that. And by doing that, that even expanded me even more because with Clio, I haven't used it in years, but it gave me the ability to have an internal messaging system so I can message my clients, an internal system so I can share documents with them online, an internal systems for purposes of them signing new intake and forms. I literally overnight turned into this particular new practice area that I didn't realize I was actually doing. And why is this important for you? Because sometimes what happens, we hold on to what we think we have to have in order to give the appearance of being successful, when we do everything else that is making us successful and we're discounting it as a whole. That's what I did. I held on to the brick and mortar aspects of being a law firm. I was paying for the space that I was in. I was paying for certain things that I had. I was paying for liability insurance to be at these different locations. And none of those things added to my success. Being a virtual law practice did. So it's important for you to understand that when you find yourself in a situation, take stock of one, look at how you're actually doing things as opposed to how you're telling yourself you're doing something. And if somebody in your life is telling you that, hey, what you're doing is different than what you think you're doing, pay attention to that, because they actually may be right. They may actually be telling you that you're more successful doing things one way as opposed to the way you think you're doing. So in my case, I thought I was successful as a brick and mortar law firm, but at the end of the day, my success came from the fact that I was a virtual practice. Didn't realize it until I actually did. All right, everyone. Again, thank you for turning to another edition of Reeves Reflection. As always, you can hit me up at anthonyreeves.com. And as always, as I end this show with my favorite question of the day, you know what time it is. Are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?